Welcome to the PSD Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Jim Hinkle, the ministry executive of the district, and I am joined today by a friend and fantastic co-host, Xavier Schwartz, the executive director for school administration. Welcome, Xav.
Thanks, Jim. I'm so excited to be here. We're in this fancy podcast studio, and I'm feeling very, very excited about this. I love podcasts, and now we get to do it together.
That's fantastic. Xav is going to co-host a few of these podcasts with me. We're going to have 7 of them in season 1. This is our 3rd. If you missed either of the first 2, we invite you to find those links. You're also welcome to participate in our podcast forum, just continuing the discussion that we have here together. And you may especially want to do that because our emphasis today is on worker wellness. We are joined by our friend Courtney Burns. She is a licensed professional counselor, the former director of counseling at Faith Lutheran Middle and High School in Las Vegas. Courtney, it's great to have you.
Oh, I am so excited to see both of you again. It's so great to be here.
Courtney has presented at many of our professional worker conferences and highlighted the importance of health and wellness among church workers. And as we get into that, we want to share a little bit about the particular stressors or the genuine issues that workers are facing. For all the talk we have of wellness, there've got to be things that are driving that.
I think the life of a church worker is so complex in so many ways, and particularly related to mental health. When I see clients in private practice who are not church workers, but who are people of faith, faith can be kind of a sticky subject. There can be this thing that we're up against, this belief of if I'm struggling with depression or anxiety or addiction, that it must mean that I'm lacking in my faith. It must mean that my prayer life is not robust enough, or that I have somehow strayed from the path that God has called me to. And when you're called into ministry, that pressure can be times a million, because now we're talking about my divine calling from God, and I'm struggling. And that's very heavy for a lot of church workers. And then adding into that, just the nature of church work, that it's so immersive. I may work at a school that has a church attached, and so now it's my spiritual home and my employer. My kids may go to school there, and so now I'm interacting with my children's teachers and the people that are mentoring and looking out for them. It's likely my social circle. And then we have so many church workers who are married to each other. And so it really is this very nuanced, complex fishbowl that we're trying to be well in.
There's a unique interconnectedness that church workers experience that makes it difficult, because if you are facing a struggle or a difficulty, it's just compounded then in every part of your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What Courtney described is pretty much my own personal experience, in that I was in the ministry at my church and school for 25 years. So I started there newly married. That's where I had my kids. I often say, like, Christ Lutheran School was my first baby. And so I was very interconnected there. And I often say, like, it's the best piece of getting to be in ministry is being so connected to so many people. But if it breaks, or if something in you is hurting, it becomes the very hardest piece of being in ministry, because your entire life is revolving around this thing that you love so much and you completely believe you're called to, but it's hurting you. And then what do?
Wellness is definitely an emphasis throughout the church, but that hasn't always been our experience. We have decades of ministry experience among us, but we're also familiar with those who have come before us, maybe even members of our own family, who would not have used the word wellness or even considered the concept in many ways when it comes to that. Is it just a difference in the culture? Is it because there are more stressors or different stressors than there used to be?
Yes.
Okay.
To all of that. I think that the world post-pandemic has not recovered. We have not recovered. Anxiety is higher than ever. People are more polarized and isolated than ever. Finding connection, finding community is even more difficult. And so the stakes are higher in a lot of ways. The conversation about wellness has been really interesting to follow, particularly related to social media, because there's this really great side where so much of the stigma has been pulled off, and we're now able to talk about this openly. and people are admitting diagnoses that they have or struggles that they've faced or things that they've overcome in ways that 20 years ago would not have happened. And that's true in the secular world, and I believe in the church as well. We're seeing just a lot of vulnerability and a lot of admission of personal hardship. And that really does open the door for our next generation to speak up and get help and find places to land. Kind of the downside to that, though, is not all of the information that is out there is accurate. And so we still have to be so intentional that we're providing the best possible avenues to good information and good support.
Mm-hmm.
There are any number of different issues that church workers may face. The ones I find myself hearing the most from church workers as I engage with pastors, DCEs, even teachers, anxiety, and they're not always even sure the way to describe that. Pressure, stress, just incredible demands where they feel the weight of the ministry or even the weight of the mission on them, and conflict and the ways they might navigate that, and finding themselves in a circumstance, maybe even in a culture in which that doesn't happen the way that it ought.
I would add to that, I think they really struggle with margin, like not having any space on the sides of their life. I think that can be definitely emotional margin, time margin, financial margin. I think that creates a lot of worker wellness issues. And then I would also add into that just their struggle to see sometimes how their faith interweaves with their work. And so we as workers, as church workers, you would think that automatically comes to us, that that's just an easy piece of what we do. But sometimes we really struggle with where our faith intersects. And if I feel like I'm not following Jesus as I should, and I'm using air quotes right now, that then I maybe shouldn't be in church work. And I think if we aren't in church work, we might not feel those pressures the same way.
Mm. Well, and one of the things that you said there, just the word should.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I hear someone use the word should as related to performance or wellness, to me that speaks to I'm hearing a shame. I'm hearing something that I'm very afraid people are going to see in me. And so just, for anyone listening in the conversations that you're having related to people's work, that is a red flag to note and stop and pause and see what might be going on underneath that. The very nature of ministry is so consuming. We're on fire, right? We're called to this, and this is the work that we've been brought to do, and we believe in it. But also Jesus showed us we have to rest. And he's God. He did not have to model rest to us, but he did intentionally. And that's, I think, a permission piece that's so important to give to people, that rest, whether it's physical or mental or emotional, whether that looks like taking a break or seeking counseling or just that time away.
And not only permission that we need to give to workers, but guidance we need to give to organizations,
yes,
to churches and schools. That is incredibly essential.
Yeah, and that it's our responsibility to be modeling that from the top down, right? So pastors, principals, teachers, we're talking to you.
Well, let's talk to you too. How do you rest?
I always say, like, anytime we talk about schedules and how to manage schedules, I should never be the person in the podcast seat because, like you, Courtney, I mean, we talked as we were starting this podcast, like, I love to say yes. And I usually say yes and then figure out how that's going to fit into my schedule. And so I would say something I have learned to do, though, is to especially take a Sabbath from email. And so I don't know that I'm great at taking a Sabbath from everything, all of the stressors in my life, but I intentionally don't check my email for a period of time every weekend. And I had to learn that early on because it was breaking me. And, I love how accessible I love work. And so that's a piece to me. Somebody said yesterday that if you go into church work, you usually land in one of two categories. Either it's really easy to be lazy or really easy to be a workaholic. And I definitely land in the workaholic category, and I just love it so much, and it's so accessible all the time. So that's a way I've learned I have to rest, is give myself permission, and then just hold myself accountable to taking a Sabbath from my email.
Zave and I both share a passion for ministry and the work that God has given us to do, but I have matured in that experience of rest over the years. For me, some of it is reading, and not just theological reading or professional reading, because that may not feel like rest, but just delightful reading, all kinds of different books. I tend to be a person who reads 50, 60 books a year. And oftentimes getting into that book means getting out of the world in which I'm otherwise in. It becomes an escape for me and helps me to detach and rest. And the other for me is travel. My wife and I value being able to do that together, and even at times with friends. It's an experience we had this summer, and we're planning others. But I often need that physical detachment to have the emotional detachment from things that are going on as well.
Well, and I think an important piece I've been able to learn over the years is what rest looks like for me. And so I'm an extrovert. I love people. And so rest for me does include hosting people, being with people, intentionally spending deep, meaningful time with people. And so rest is going to look different for everyone. And I think that's a really important piece of learning to take care of yourself and promote worker wellness. Is what rest looks like for one of us is not what rest looks like for the other of us. And if I want to make dinner and clean up afterwards and find rest in that because I'm with my people and in conversation, that's okay. I'm allowed to do that, to find rest in actually busy activity.
Tell us about the one or two issues you tend to hear at church worker gatherings or conferences. We've referenced all kinds of things about the integration of faith and work, or the experience of anxiety and pressure. Are those the same things you're hearing, or are there different concerns?
I think the anxiety and pressure are a big piece of it. I think in ministry, there is such an awareness of good stewardship and the fact that resources are so limited. Any school that's functioning well, any congregation that's functioning in a healthy manner is going to have that teamwork sense and the all hands on deck pulling together. And that's part of what's so valuable about the experience. It can sometimes backfire, though, into I don't want to be the weak link. I don't want to be the one who's seen as not pulling my weight. I don't want to slow the team down. I hear that a lot. And that's where I think I really get passionate about how do we show organizations ways to make this accessible? How do we create that so that when someone is struggling, there's an easy avenue to get help? We can alleviate that feeling quickly. My very favorite Brene Brown quote is, the last thing that we need in the middle of the human existence is shame for the human experience. And anytime we can get in quickly and intervene, I feel like we really can go against that.
Are there things that fellow workers, just friends of church workers, may do to be more effective, to engage them? You talk about, getting in early and intervening, maybe even seeing things that indicate someone is struggling. Are there things that we can do better, be more effective?
I think it's easy to confuse transparency with intimacy, especially as church workers. We all have a testimony. We all have the story that we will stand on stage and roll out for the people of the things that sound very, very vulnerable, but truly aren't, because we own it. It's a part of our story now. That truly vulnerable, intimate, this is the thing in my current life that I'm worried about or I'm struggling with, or it's a little bit of a tender spot that I'm kind of hoping you don't notice on me. being able to share that with each other really opens the door for that true connection and that true conversation. And it can just be a lifeline. There's been a number of times in my career that, and listen, I talk way too much and I overshare and I've built a career on it. There have been so many times though that I've kind of, this is what's happening and this is what I'm worried about, and been met with, I never would have imagined, thank you, because so am I. And so giving people the opportunity to truly see us as people.
That's not only great advice when it comes to wellness, but it is certainly valuable insight when it comes to witness with anybody. And that is, we often witness out of our own struggle, our own difficulty, and that bears witness to the God who forgives us, the God who redeems us. And that's true in wellness as well. That is the real connection we have with everybody, far more in our struggle than our success. We are recording the podcast at Concordia University, Irvine. This is a special place for us in the district, and we are thankful that they would host us here. Part of Concordia is the Townsend Institute, which is training counselors and coaches, and I had the opportunity to gather with them this summer and discuss anxiety, even to share a message about anxiety for those who study it from a psychological perspective, to be able to discuss it with them from a theological perspective. And that word anxiety we read in the Bible is a word that references pieces or parts. People may talk about falling to pieces or only having a part of something. And the theological emphasis with that is we may find ourselves anxious as we only recognize our part. The pressure is on us to do or not to do something, or the expectations that revolve around us. And we don't often recognize God's part, the extraordinary things he is doing beyond anything that we would ever be able to accomplish. That is what, in those verses in Philippians 4 that discuss anxiety, brings peace and some assurance that he is at work.
Absolutely. And all so important, and the, the wisdom of the Bible, and giving it to God, and understanding that we're not in this alone, and that we are created for a purpose, but we are not created to walk alone. We are created for God to walk alongside of us and to be within our community, particularly as church workers. When we come to anxiety, I always want to tread lightly, because I feel like out of all of the things that people can face when it comes to mental health, anxiety is the one that has the greatest pressure to, if you're just praying enough about it, it will go away. And that can be so disheartening when people don't have that experience. There very much is a physical component to anxiety. There is a nervous system response. There is a fight or flight misfiring that can happen. And it's so interesting to guide people from a Christian counseling standpoint of, yes, God loves you and God is looking out for you. And yes, we want you in prayer. And yes, you are not alone in this. And also, yet you are still feeling this way. And that is not a failing on your part. And that is not an absence of God. That is something that we are going to work on.
When it comes to wellness, share with us some of the things that we may be missing or overlooking as a church. As you have been a part of this discussion within the church, and you are aware of resources that are out there and emphases that people have, are there aspects of it that we're just not yet addressing, or that we haven't engaged in the ways that we should?
I think the thing that comes most readily to mind is work in the area of addiction. I think that the conversation has really started and is moving in great ways when it comes to kind of, anxiety and depression and even personality disorders and things like that. Addiction still feels to me very taboo. It feels like it still carries a lot of shame, and we don't necessarily come at it as open-hearted as we do in other areas.
Yeah. Do you think that we attach sin very quickly to addiction? And when it comes to anxiety or depression or other pieces that land in the mental health category, that we're a lot quicker to say, that's not sinful, that's something they're struggling with, or that's situational or whatever. And Yeah, so it's a little easy. It's been easier for us to walk towards admitting things like depression and anxiety than it is for us to admit addiction.
Hmm. I think so. I think that's all so true. Addiction also can be the most destructive,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be a hard place to find empathy and compassion when you see the effects of it, particularly on families, on children.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of different beliefs out there as far as where personal control lies,
Yeah.
where addiction is concerned.
Sure. Well, and the admission of that, like, does that potentially destroy our opportunity to be in full-time ministry,
Hmm.
depending on where we're at on that path of admitting addiction? If we don't lean into an admission of it early on, it could potentially destroy our families, our marriages, our our opportunity to be in ministry, right? We were talking
Hmm.
about the whole fishbowl effect, right? Like, you do live in a fishbowl when you sign up for ministry, and there are pieces of it that if you don't take care of will land you out of the opportunity to be in ministry. And that's scary,
It's
right?
very scary. It would be far scarier to come in to your pastor or your principal and say, I think I'm struggling with a substance use
Mhm.
disorder, as opposed to I've been diagnosed with clinical depression.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And yet, those things that we experience that have a sin component and have a struggle component are things that we absolutely have to engage in the church. If we're not engaging that in these ministry contexts with repentance and forgiveness, as well as assistance and healing and all of those things, where's that going to get engaged? I definitely agree. The sin component to those things causes people to move to a place of judgment. But that should not be the initial reaction or perception. It should be a move of engagement. That's certainly the teaching of Scripture. When anybody finds themselves in sin, the move is to engage for the sake of repentance and forgiveness, and then all the other things that need to come along with that.
Mhm.
Well, and there are addiction pieces that we are quick to like tally up to sin and that they're destruction. But I would suggest that there are a lot of addiction pieces that we struggle with that don't get the same view, I guess, lens or view. So I think many of our church workers are addicted to things that like calm them, right? So they binge way too much on Netflix or some show, or they listen obsessively to podcasts in order to go to sleep at night, right? Because their mind is spinning with all of these things. That's definitely an addiction.
Thank you for listening to this podcast, though. We appreciate that.
I hope you are binging on this. Um, but that doesn't bring with it the same sort of perception as drugs, alcohol, sex, whatever. And that, but we don't always land them in the same category, right? But we are numbing something often. And I think admitting that or leaning into that would be helpful to not see to see addiction all in that same category rather than, well, this is bad addiction and this is acceptable addiction.
Hmm. Well, and even, anytime I work with anyone who is questioning whether they have issues with addiction or issues with substance use, we really come at it from the motivational interviewing standpoint of, has this ceased to serve you? Is this no longer providing benefit or positive gain? And if it's not, are you open to exploring maybe ways to feel better that don't look like this?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting too, because I feel like I've had a number of pastors over the years that have approached me at different things that I've spoken at, that have almost, though, overcorrected on the compassion side of, I have this person who is struggling with some form of addiction or some sort of mental health crisis and is not able to perform their job functions. But we don't know how to hold them accountable because we are so compassionate. And that's always such a delicate conversation because we want to protect and care for our church workers. We cannot necessarily do that at the risk of the people we are serving.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have to be mindful of that as well. And which again comes around to the most compassionate thing to do is to have help accessible
Yeah.
and make sure that the right help arrives.
Yeah.
The district really desires to do that. We're having all kinds of conversations about the way we can resource wellness and love our church workers in the best possible ways. There are some who may have Concordia plans as part of their benefits package. And with that comes accessibility to mental health and counseling, and accessibility of which they may be unaware. And we are certainly pleased to help them discover more and more about what those benefits are. But whether you have that as a benefit or you have other health coverage or that kind of, so often there are church workers that feel stuck about the next step, the person they should call, the resources available. Are there other thoughts or insights that you have for them about that?
Well, I first want to give a shout out to Kevin Herwick, who is such a champion for worker wellness. He's with Concordia Health Plans. He really was a huge driving force behind Evernorth and the things that they have rolled out to help support workers, and is just such a great guy. And I've just been so grateful for the opportunity to work with him over the years on this area, because he's really brought to the table a lot of cool things through Concordia Health Plans. Big fan of Kevin. I think as far as encouragement with seeking help, finding a therapist is truly like dating. You are not going to necessarily connect with the first person that you sit down with. And I think that it can be really easy to, muster up the courage to get brave enough to reach out and try to find help. And then when you do actually find someone to meet with and it doesn't gel, it can be so discouraging and so disheartening. And it can be years before people try again. And so I really just want to offer the encouragement of keep trying. Most of us didn't go on one bad date and then decide we were going to take 5 years off and see what happened, right? We really have to be able to get in there. And it's hard to find mental health workers. There is a nationwide shortage. There is a compact that's been introduced that most states have signed. I'm super excited. It's for licensed professional counselors, where we can apply for privilege to practice in different states, and it just broaden our reach through telehealth. And I'm so excited to watch that continue to unfold, because I think that's going to be a really big thing, particularly for church workers who are looking to access therapists who are Lutheran.
Mm-hmm.
Our emphasis is on worker wellness, but I would be remiss if we didn't have discussion about adolescents and young adults, people with whom you have worked so closely out there in Vegas over the years, and people that we all serve, the church workers listening to this podcast, the parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents listening to this podcast, serve these children and youth in their lives and have such great love for them. And they're sensitive to the experiences that they're having. And are there things there that are of value for us to discuss?
The world that this generation is living in is so different from the one that we grew up in. And that is such a point of stress, I feel, for the parents that I work with as I work with their children as my clients, or even back in the school. There's just this fear of these kids are navigating this world that is so unknown, and how possibly could we help them? And it comes all the way back around, though, to relationship. When we are present and we're listening and we're open-hearted to them, and we're just continuing to model and be honest and be vulnerable and share and offer a soft place to land, they continue to come back and they continue to engage in conversation. And so we don't have to know all of the social media trends, and we don't have to necessarily stay on top of whatever it is they're yelling in the hallway right now to make each other laugh. But we do have to stay in relationship.
Yeah. One of the things I want to lean into, Jim, before we wrap this up, is talking about how important worker wellness is for our current workers so that we can inspire the next generation of workers. And if we're not taking care of ourselves right now in the trenches, how are we going to convince a new generation that being a Lutheran church worker is worth it?
We're going to have an episode that deals with worker recruitment. And this is a discussion that we have as a district, and one that's part of the synod more broadly, that worker wellness drives worker recruitment. And for all the discussions about the ways to more effectively encourage or recruit people to church work, wellness, helping our workers discover genuine joy, become truly healthy, is one of the best ways that can happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I think that leaning into worker wellness as a district and a synod is so important is that are the kids that we're ministering to and congregation members that we're ministering to, we're not going to get the opportunity to have a seat at the table with them if we're not there at the table. And I love church work and I want kids to go into church work. But if my life looks miserable, if I am always anxious, if I'm constantly numbing things because I'm overwhelmed, then that's not projecting for them a life that's worth investing in. And so I just really want to encourage all church workers out there that are listening to this or people connected to church workers that you know to really encourage them to take care of their personal health, especially their, all avenues of their wellness. But as we've talked so much, especially their mental health in an effort to encourage future church workers.
We use words with assumptions of their meanings at times. It's certainly true in theology. It's true in ministry. And we're using words like wellness and health. And we don't always describe those words or their meaning. For many, there's an assumption that, well, being well or being healthy means some type of perfection, that I'm not dealing with any issues or that I don't have any things happening in my life. And I don't know that I've ever had that experience. Is there a spectrum there when it comes to those
Well, and
words?
people who seem perfect aren't people I like very much.
No, they are not honest.
Right?
They seem perfect. To me, wellness has always meant I want to be the 80-year-old who's still in this. I want to be the 80-year-old who's still at the table, who's still out there and engaged and speaking and excited to meet new people and excited to be a part of things and strong in my faith and close to my family and enjoying the moments that I have. That's what I want. And to me, that will be a life well lived. And that absolutely allows for some days are better than others and some seasons are better than others. And we can have a really hard, difficult season. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we are unwell. And we can go through a season of not being well. And that doesn't mean that we won't be healed.
Yeah, that nothing we're navigating on the wellness side needs to be forever,
Yes.
right? And I'm really encouraged by that because I think there are just really, really difficult seasons in ministry, in life for anyone who's listening to this, but especially in ministry. I think we can think because we're serving Jesus, we're signing up for a life that's going to be really fruitful and blessed. And in so many ways it is. You are going to experience so much great stuff, but you are going to have seasons that are really disappointing and they kind of catch us off guard because when you accept a call and you really believe the Lord's led you to something and you're so certain you just prayed and prayed and prayed about that, and then it's not fulfilling for a piece of that, I think that is a lot heavier than people who may not be in ministry who are just in a season of like, well, my job's not that great right now. But I don't know that we connect other jobs to like the fulfillment of God's call on our life. And that's heavy for called workers.
The experience of wellness for me so often is defined by joy prevailing, even as there's hurt, even as there's pain, even as there is uncertainty, that joy ultimately prevails in the midst of that. And that joy word is a word that's intimately connected with grace, that whatever it is I'm experiencing, I get to discover God's grace in that. The God who endured the cross for me, who definitely understood hurt and pain, that I get to experience that grace that he has for me in the midst of whatever my cross may be. Courtney, thanks so much for spending time with us. We are always blessed to talk with you, the insights that you have. We'd love to partner with you more in ministry in the district. That's something that we're talking about as well. And if you'd like to learn more about the district, about wellness, please visit our website, psd-lcms.org. If you desire a wellness resource or you're dealing with something and need help, please reach out to us. You can do that through the website by calling the district office. Our team, Zave, me, so many others are here to serve with you.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm always so excited to get to see you, and thank you for the work that you do to take care of our people. It's really valuable, and you both are so incredible.